Section C, audited reports. Section C, audited reports. Project recipients. Project recipients expend a total of $500,000 more for this fiscal year. Federal state funded the most provided the Department of Education Bureau of the contract grants and procurement management service to comply with the annual audited report completed by the certified public accountant, the Florida Auditor General, in accordance with the 1996 Amendments Office Management Budget Circular Area A 133, the Florida Single Audit Act, the Section 21597 of the Florida State Statute. See Section D, General Assurance Terms and Conditions for the participation in federal, state, and programs. Florida Single Audited Act and Single Audited Act of 1984, amended by the 1996 additional requirements. Failure to submit the audited reports will jeopardize the recipient fund of each agency submitted with the audited report of the due date. Compliance with the audited requirements considered non-compliance with state and federal requirements. The Bureau, the Chief of the Contract of the Bureau's Procurement Management System, will notify the respective recipients of the comptroller appropriate. The Department of Education Program Director of the compliance is determined. No awards will be issued to the is any receipt with no compliance with the audited requirements is in the responsible each of the program notify the appropriate personnel in his or her area when the project recipient is not compliant with the audited requirements. When the project recipient is deemed in non-compliance, all funding in the department will be terminated until the non-compliance is corrected. When the eligibility of the fund is stored by the Bureau, the Chief of the Contract of Grants and Procurement Management Services will notify the respective recipient of the comptroller, the appropriate program director, responsible each of the program director to notify the appropriate personnel in his or her area. If the Florida Department of Education 2013 Green Book Section C, official adjustments to credited adjustments but to be reported the reduction in expenditure following procedures describe the appropriate method of corrective action. Federal cash advance of project entitlement project. The project is open. The project recipient should decrease the expenditure of the card to the project number to which the corrective action pertains. The project is closed. The recipient should decrease the expenditures reported to the cards and the current project number. The federal cash advancement of the project discretionary. The project is always open prior to the liquidation. The recipient should decrease the expenditures reported on the cards of the project numbers to which the corrective action pertains to the project is closed and as to the past the liquidation due date. The recipient should submit the supplemental report of the appropriate form. The Department of Education 399, 49, and 5599. Decrease expenditure for the closed project. Review the grant accounted for the project cards and manual prowess to decrease the expenditure. The agency will be able to access the project to move the excess cash advance and another current project. The reimbursement advance program payment of the program project. The recipient should submit in the supplemental project disbursement report of the appropriate Department of Education 399, 49, and 599. Decrease the expenditure of the department project of the appropriate unchecked may be applied to payable to the Florida Department of Education, may be the Department of Education comptroller, and the mail to the Department of Education comptroller at the addresses below. Question regarding project status which should be addressed to the Department of Education Bureau, the Comptroller, 1914 Turlington Building 325 West Caney Street, the Tallahassee, Florida, 32399-0400-850-245-0401. Administrative costs, indirect costs defined by the Office Management Budget Circular A87, U.S. Department of Education, indirect cost determination guidance of the state, local government agencies, Education Department, the General Administrative Regulations, EDGAR. The documents available online for the following websites: Office Management Budget Circular A87 of the WhiteHouse.gov, the Office of Management and Budget Circular Defaults, U.S. Department of Education cost allocations of state and local governments to the education, the education to www.2education.gov above offices list of OCFOs, FIPAOs, and Blue Book Quasi HTML. The EDGAR the 2D government policy funded the regular EDGAR regulation EDGAR HTML. Some school districts, federal Department of Education, have been given the authority of the U.S. Department of Education to negotiate indirect proposals to improve the indirect cost of the rates of school districts. School districts are not required to develop indirect cost proposal file or fail, so they will not be allowed to recover any indirect cost amount of the zero to the maximum negotiated rate approved the public for the project. The Department of Education comptroller indirectly the cost should apply to the federal projects. Additional information forms available for the Florida Department of Education.org. Comptroller, state agencies, universities, state colleges. Florida Department of Education will allow the other states, if they state and universities, state colleges, to change the indirect administrative overhead of the 5% recipient rate of the approved appropriate cognizant agency. Whichever is lower, the rate should be charged in total direct cost to disburse less than the amount of subcontract in excess of $25,000 for a list of items, alterations, renovations, or other flow through funds pass through or another entity on other projects in the department, and the rate invented intended to be all-inclusive in typical administrative overhead costs, and including but not limited to rental office space costs, bookkeeping, accounting services, utilities, and the the department will approve the indirect costs of the 5% plus the direct changes in typical administrative overheads such as the office space rental is such costs and directly appropriately allocated. The program indirect costs should be applied to the federal projects. Other agencies to be allowed to recover the indirect costs, and agencies other school districts must be furnished the Department of Education comptroller a copy of the current negotiated indirect cost plans that have been approved with the appropriate cognizant agency amount of the zero maximum negotiated rate for the approved and the program project. Department of Education comptroller indirect costs shall be not applied to the federal state projects. Administrative fees of the non-federal fee funds. Administrative fees may be approved by the Department of non-federal projects not exceed 5% of the total cost of the project. The restriction funds of the restriction amount of the percentage charged by the projection administrative, which includes the indirect and specified request for proposal, request for application reflected in the approved project, award, notification, improvement, and approvable when applicable. Limitations of recovery, administrative costs. Major limitations of fact that how much administrative costs must be recovered, not indirect costs available only on the federal funds. Limitation that follows the negotiated rate of the department and maximum allowable indirect costs and rates. The zero maximum may be approved of the program project of the Department of Education comptroller of federal, state, local grant conditions may limit to the amount of the indirect costs. For example, the recipient has restricted rate of the 5% of the loss allows the 3% rate of the recovery. The recipient can recover the indirect costs that equal to 3% of the direct cost. Grant terms and conditions may also exist on the sum of federal awards prohibited in any recovery in direct costs. Recovering the direct cost projects is subject to availability funds. Most restricted grants allocated state of the block grant in which each recipient is entitled to a maximum project amount. The total indirect costs cannot be exceeded the maximum entitlement. The indirect cost is recovered to only the extent of the direct cost incurred. The indirect cost rating is applied to the direct amount of the expended not into the project award not recovered, and the indirect cost must be used in local matching funds, and the matching funds is required assuming the total indirect costs incurred with the plus the actual direct expenditures exceeded the total amount available to the receipt of the project is manufactured. Matching funds of project assessed non-recovered indirect costs may be used for the matching funds. Other issues, all in disbursement, re-important compliance to applicable law, regulations, state rules for produce program requirements for Florida Department of Education Financial Service, DFS, Department of Financial Services reference guide for the state expenditures available at myfloridaacfo.com. AAA directory reference guide. Division action is amended by the 40 U.S. Standard Code 276 to sequence the required federal program legislation. All required instruction contracts awarded by the recipient subsequent in excess of $2,000 shall include the provision of compliance with Davis-Bacon Act of 40 U.S. Standard Code 276 sequence supplemented the Department of Law Regulations 29 Code Federal Regulation Part 5 the Labor Standard provision to applicable contracts covering federal financial assisted construction under the acts of contracts shall be required to pay the wages of laborers, mechanics rated not less than minimum wages specified in wage determination made by the Secretary of Labor. In addition, with the contract should be required to pay the wages of not less than 1 week of the labor. Each of the solicitation awarding the contract should be continued upon the acceptance of the wage determination. The recipient shall be report all suspected reported violation federal awarding agencies, Department of Law Regulations, rules, instruction concerning implementation, Davis-Bacon, or other law laborers, and found in Title 29 for Code Federal Regulations Part 1, 3, 5, and 6, and 7. Equipment property. Upon the term of the project, the discretion of the Department of the equipment property purchased on the project funds are transferred to the location specified in the department. All necessary actions to transfer the ownership records of the equipment property of the department of the or designee will be taken. Section C only applies to district school boards other than travel related meals. In Section 1001.432, the Florida State Statute provides the U.S. standard. The Florida State statutes provide us with federal funds. The purchase funds when federal program guidelines permitted such use. The changes allow the expenditures for food and federal programs and special federal programs allows it in the districts adopted the appropriate policy. The state legislation requirements expenditures for food must be included in the budget form of the program narrative submitted by the Department of Approval with a copy of the district district adopted policies and procedures. Interest in coming there is required in Section 216, 181, 16B, the Florida State Statute 34 Code Federal Regulations, Part 80 to 21 Project Grant. The recipient shall promptly at least quarterly remit the interest earned in each of the on the cash advance department. The payment shall be submitted to the Department of Education Bureau of the Comptroller, 1914 Turlington Building, 325 West Gainey Street, Tallahassee, Florida 323990400. Personal cost time distribution. Office of Management Budget Circular A87 Attachment B, Paragraph H. Changes in federal projects of the project personnel costs such as salaries, wage when they're treated as direct or indirect costs will be based on payrolls documented in accordance with the general accepted practices of the local educational agency approved by the responsible officials of the LEA. Local educational agency as required by the Office of Budget Circular 87, which employs the work solely in the single federal account award of the objections in charge of the salaries, wages must be reported per period of certification. As least a semi-annual employees work solely on the program for the period of the covered by the certification. The certification must be signed and be employed the supervisor of officially having the first-hand knowledge of the work performed by the employee. The employee works on the multiple activities, cost of objectives more than federal awarded or federal awarded, non-federal awarded, indirect cost activities, direct cost activities, two or more indirect activities allocated using different allocation bases, unable to activity and direct and indirect cost activities and distribution of salary wages will be supported by personal activity reports, equivalent documents that meet the following standards, reflect on the after the fact distribution actual activity of each employee, on the total activity in which the employee is compensated, prepared at least monthly and most coincided with one or more pay periods may be signed by the employee. U.S. Department of Education has improved by the Florida State Statute substituted allocation of salary federal projects under the substituted system. The personal activity reporting system PARS must be implemented in school districts so long as they implemented that in accordance with the Department of Education approved by the substituted system. The document is available upon the Department of the Bureau of the Contract and procurement of the management system. The school district chooses to substitute the system. No variations are allowed within the specific writing of the authorization for the Florida Department of Education. School district choosing not to use the approved substituted system must implement a system that meets Office Management Budget Circular A87 and standard. School districts choosing the Department of Education substituted must now furnish the Department of Education Comptroller Office of the District with policies, procedures, specification, reporting months, as well as the actual time reporting instruments of approval for each of the district of the given authority to adopt the substituted system. Written approval agreement within will be an effective duration distribution and participation substituted system until such time the requirements should be changed to the Department of Education. This does not authorize school districts to consolidate administrative funds except for the otherwise stated in the project awarded notifications or use of terms, or to the use of teams as basis of allocation personnel costs and the method of applying with the department. Procurement and the suspension of debarment. Under the federal regulations, subgrantees cannot be awarded, subgranted a contract or any tariff to any other party that debarred, suspended, otherwise expended the ineligible participation. Federal Assistance Program 34 Code Federal Regulation 8035 Federal Regulation 2 Code 2 Title 2 Third Code Federal Regulations Part 180 70 FR 5186.3 requires all contract sub-award expected to actually exceed $25,000 equal to or exceed $25,000 entered into the non-federal entities verified and ensure the recipients are not included from the receiving federal monies because they are suspended, debarred in Section General Assurances, Terms, Conditions, Participation in Federal State Programs, and additional information in Section D. All federal regulations concerning debarred, suspended parties, including located into all Title 2 Code Federal Regulations Part 180 and Title 34 Code Federal Regulations Part 80 must be filed. Promotional items such as must not be limited to printed pens, pencils, T-shirts, and not limited to printed pencils, T-shirts are not allowable expenses of program specific statutory regulatory authority. Such items as written requests of approval submitted citing authority recipient and sub-recipient must be obtained the written approval for the Department of Education pursuing promotional items. Purchasing recipients may use the other procurement policy provided that they meet the requirements of the federal, state statute rules and regulations under the EDGAR procurement of the standards located in Title 34 Code Federal Regulations 8036B. Supplemental supplement. In accordance with the program specification, authorization, laws, regulations, implementations, laws, federal funds are generally used to increase the extent of the practicable level of non-federal funds. Section C. Also with the supplemental non-supplement, they would be available for the absence of federal funds and no case for replace the non-federal funds. The Stevens Amendment. The federal funded projects must comply with the Stevens Amendment, Department of Defense Appropriation Action found by the Section 8136, which provides when issuing statements, press releases, purposes, request for proposals, bid, solicitation, and other documentation describing projects, programs funded in whole and part of the federal money, all grantees receiving federal funds, including not limited to state, local governments, shall clearly 1% of total cost of the program project, which by the finance of federal money, to an amount of dollar amount of the federal funds of the project program, to the percentage of the dollar amount of the total cost of the project program that will be funded for the non-governmental sources. Travel recipients, sub-recipients performed in the connection with approved projects or activities being compliant with Section 112.061 Florida State statutes will cover the per diem allowance. Travel expense of Florida Department of Education travel manual is available at the Florida Department of Education Comptroller PDF travel manual PDF 112 061 Florida State statute applicable counties, county officers, district school boards, special districts, planning organizations establishing statutory authority allowing specified entities and establishing travel reimbursement rates other issued in section 112 061 6A, 6B, and 7D. The Florida State statutes and each entity must comply with in accordance with the statute, including the project application, copy of the applicable document, and the e.g. ordinances, resolutions, policy, rules, and have detailed description of the project budget form. Section D. General assurances determine conditions of participation in federal, state, and programs.